Welcome to Amazing Indiana Music Stories.
My name is Mike Robertson, and this is my amazing Indiana music story. I was born in Martinsville, and it was a winter day, and I think my dad borrowed an old Model T car to get there, and there was snow on the ground. This is January 16th, so he brought me back home, and so I've been in Brown County ever since. He bought the farm here from Grandpa in 1952. So I was just a little feller about then, but I grew up right here on the place. So.
What can you remember from your childhood that kind of helped drive you towards music? And
Oh, well, Mom played the piano, and of course she could sing, and then Dad played the guitar and the violin, and he played and he could sing, and so when I was a kid I would get Mom's records out. Of course, now Mom is Hungarian. Dad took her out of the Pittsburgh area and turned her into a farm wife, but I would get her records out and listen to them. Some of them were gypsy records. And then just a variety of things, and I'd sit and listen to them. So that was probably my earliest experience with music.
And that you grew up here.
Yep.
On
Yep, right here on the family farm. Actually, it was back in the middle 90s that I decided I wanted a place to play music. So I had a band and we'd play all around, and so some of the places we played were dirty and not a place you would invite your family and friends to come and sit and listen to you. So I said, man, if I could just have my own place, at least I could keep it clean and be nice to people, and that was the start of it all. So I'd been looking for property and couldn't find anything, in Brown County there ain't no level ground hardly left. So my dad, he said, I'll tell you what, I'll just deed that field to you across the highway, and here's 9, almost 10 acres. And so it was the hay field and still half a hay field, but that's where it started. And I had bought a sawmill, a wood miser, and I said, well, I can cut trees off of the farm maybe. It wouldn't have been too good because all it is white oak. But I did get a pile of logs from a guy named Rumpke that bought a quarry, an old quarry, and he turned it into a transfer station. So we cut all the trees down that grew up, and a lot of them were poplar. And I found out it was for sale. There's 4 big piles of logs. And his manager says, I'm taking bids, but the deal is if you buy them, you take them all. We don't want anything left. So I looked, there's a lot of sycamore, a lot of cottonwood that you couldn't use, but a lot of poplar that you could. So I said, I can give you 1,000. And he said, you just bought them. So it cost me almost $3,000 to get them hauled to Brown County, but it was still a deal, and that's how I built the place. So
you brought that lumber here, and you used the one-man wood miser.
Brought those logs and sawed them out with the wood miser, and it was a nice machine. It was out of Indianapolis. A guy up there has a factory, and it's a one-man sawmill, but it'll work one man. 2 men is better. And it's a big bandsaw with a gas motor on it. And we had a tractor with a forklift, and we'd bring them over and put them on the sawmill and saw it up. So the other wood we just turned into firewood that you couldn't use. And so that's the framing, the siding, the porches, all the trim inside, that's all from that pile.
What about the dance floor?
The dance floor, this is all Indiana red oak. And a friend of mine had a big a kiln and a mill, and I knew him, and he said, "I'll sell it to you mill run," which means just out of the planer, and it wasn't end matched, and it had knot holes in it here and there, but it didn't need to be end matched because it's on a piece of 3/4 inch plywood on top of concrete. So I set up a miter saw and we started laying it in place. And before that, I asked how to make a cushioned dance floor. And every architect I asked had a different idea. So we ended up just putting sheets of 3/4 inch tongue and groove down. And the concrete was still a little green. So we just used cement nails around the edge. And then I put down 30-pound tar paper and then nailed it. And so the dance floor moves. When it's quiet, it squeaks. But that's what the dancers like. It's a cushioned dance floor, redneck style, I guess you could say.
Well, it's unique. I know driving by many times, I wondered what was going on over here. During the construction of it, how long did all that take?
Well, it took longer to get permission from the county than it did to build it. So it took 2 years to get permission. So, and then of course financing. But yeah, they didn't know if they wanted a music place, and it was farmland, or they call it R1. And I would have had to get general business to qualify to put a building like this on it. And so I had to go to the zoning board and have them rezone this piece of property general business, and they didn't want to do it. And so a neighbor, Phyllis from the ski world, she says, "I've made research and I know all the businesses from Nashville to the county line." And there was a bunch. Some grandfathered, and some, there was, right around the corner is 40 acres of general business, and they didn't know it. You had to tell the zoning board. You had to educate them. And so they finally decided to let me have a general business so I could get a permit. And then that was in 94, 95, and I started building in 96, and then opened in 97.
And so, you, from your early childhood, your parents were both involved in music. What drove you to want to open a venue of your own?
Well, just the fact that I'd been playing since I was 19. I was playing in back then. There was a bunch of guys, and that was the days of the Ventures and the Beatles, and that's the kind of music we played then. And I'd been playing in rock bands, and then I started playing in country bands and all over. And then I just one day I was sitting at a restaurant, and I drew out what I wanted on a napkin, and I gave that to an architect. $10,000 later, I had blueprints.
One of the really nice things about the venue is that it has obviously the dance floor, but it's built from a musician standpoint too. It has green rooms on either side of the stage where the musicians sit, warm up, get ready for the show, and restrooms. And as you know, many venues, you might have a little space on stage to play, otherwise there's no real accommodations. So it really stands out amongst other venues,
Yeah.
having those amenities. Is there, are there any other elements of the building that you built to make it easier for musicians to perform here, or?
Actually, yeah, one of the rooms on the side has a full bath in it, shower and stool and sink. And so back in the day, I thought, well, when I booked Dolly Parton in here, then she's going to need her own place to get fixed up. Well, that never happened, but that was what I was thinking. But so it's nice that they can go back there and use the restroom, or they can have a place to to sit back and relax. And then I also built 2 guest rooms on the side of it too, so that sometimes entertainers would come and they'd stay overnight. And so that'll probably get used again in the future too, if we book a band and they need to stay overnight before they go on to their next show. And then I have 3 50 amp breakers, so if you could hook a camper up too if you want and stay overnight. So.
You've got a lot of accommodations.
Yeah.
So, what instruments do you play?
I just play the saxophone and harmonica some, and I did play around with guitars enough to know what the chords are. So sometimes the guys will kick off a song and they won't tell me what key they're in, so I'll just look at their hand and I'll say, we're in G, so or whatever. So, and it helped learning that. I'm not by any means a guitar player, but I've learned enough to know where the chords are.
When did you decide the sax was for you?
Well, I was a kid. Back in those days, everybody in the 5th grade learned to play the recorder, or we called it flutophone. So everybody everybody had to learn it or get exposed to it. Then after that, you could quit or go on into band. Well, in the 6th grade, most of these kids started band, and I didn't have an instrument, but I wanted a saxophone. For some reason, I just was drawn to that. And then 7th grade came and went, and I kept asking my dad. So finally he goes to a pawn shop and gets me an old beat up alto saxophone, and that was in the 8th grade, so I was 2 years behind. So I got that, and then I got a better one later, and by the 10th grade I was playing first chair. So I was one of the few that would take my horn home and practice. Most kids would just leave it in the band room and just get it out. But I like to play it. And I'll tell you a funny story. I would get it out and play it late. My dad drove the school bus. He had to get to bed early. So he said, if you want to play that thing, go up to the barn lot where I can't hear it. So I went up to the barn lot, and I'd sit on the well house, and I'd be playing along, and we had cows. And one of them would get to mooing. And I'd say, I'll find her note. So I find her note, and I'd blow it, and she'd moo back. We'd do that for 15 or 20 minutes until one of us got tired. But I tell people, if you ever want to know, a Black Angus cow moos in the key of D.
What are some other places that you played, as a young person? School, church?
Definitely in school, now back in those days, when I first started playing, we had a pep band, and we would play at ball games, and that was always fun but we didn't have a gymnasium yet. What was there was the old school where the Artist Colony Inn now sits, was a 3-story wooden school building. And behind it, where there's a parking lot now, was the gym, and all it was a place to practice, no places for bleachers or anything. And the floor had gotten damp, and it was buckled quite a bit. So when you played basketball, you had to be pretty careful where you dribbled your ball. But anyhow, we would load up in a bus and go to Morgantown and rent that gymnasium there for home games. So I played in band, and then I played in home games. And then after school is when I went and got a tenor sax. So I gave this alto up for a tenor, and it fits better with country music. You can transpose easier than with the alto. And so I went. There's an old man in Bloomington named Roan. It was an old house, and he had a music store. And I wanted a tenor, and I was looking at some used ones, and he says, I got one in, it just came in. And I looked at it, it was brand new Selmer, and it was $660. Well, in 1965, that was a lot of money. And I said, no, there's no way. He says, well, go back in there and go ahead and play it. So I sat there for an hour, and I said, okay, I got to have it. Come to find out, that was a Selmer Mark VI, and those are collector's items now. So it was, I had one of the best horns going. All these famous sax players would buy them. And I didn't know it at the time what it was, but I knew I liked it.
So that's the same one you play still?
I traded it on to a new Selmer. I went to a concert and saw Boots Randolph. And after the concert, I said, Boots, what horn are you playing? He says, it's a Selmer Super Action 80. I said, okay. And about that time, Bill Clinton was president, and the Selmer company gave him one, because he played saxophone too. I said, that settles it. So I traded that Mark VI, got $2,000 on a trade. And I remember I just paid $600 for it. I thought that was a good deal. And so I got this, and it's a good horn. It's a good copy of the Mark VI. But now I Google what a Mark VI is worth. They're worth about $12,000. Wow. One in good shape.
I don't think any of my instruments are worth any more than when I got them. So, did you get to play with your parents?
No, I never did. If they played it, we were kids then, and we just sat around listening. Now, Mom played piano at our meetings, our religious meetings. She played piano for a while. And I didn't know it till later. Before she came to Indiana, she would play on a riverboat, cruise boat, and people would sit around and sing. She never told me that. I said, "Oh, me." So that she was helping me. We were doing ballroom dances, and she loved the ballroom dancing, and she would come and help me put together a little dinner for him. And I did get up and play with the ballroom, and that was interesting. And then later, we hosted ballrooms, and I had just a bunch of country rednecks, but I said, boys, we got to learn some ballroom stuff, and they did. They were good enough that they learned songs like tangos, blue tango, and different ones like that the ballroom dancers wanted to hear. You got to kind of gear your music to what your crowd wants. So we kind of learned to do that.
With that band, what was the name of that band?
I called the band Smooth Country.
And even with the ballroom?
Yeah, we still did. Yeah, we were Smooth Country, and I didn't change it for them, but we just had to change we had to learn what a rumba was, and the difference between a Viennese waltz and regular waltz. A Viennese waltz is just a waltz sped up a little bit. So, and we had to pick some music for that. So, and they loved the dance floor. It's because it's a cushioned dance floor. And the older ballroom dancers are older, and they like the fact that it didn't hurt their legs.
Over the years, what different types of events have you had here?
Well, I've had bluegrass bands come in, and a few bands that were like rock bands. I've rented it for weddings. It's a good place for a wedding. It's got plenty of room, and I'm one of the few places that let them bring their own food in or hire a caterer. Then probably one of the most rewarding, biggest thing I've ever done is 2014. The religious group that I'm with hired Lucas Oil Stadium, and they brought international. It was an international convention, and then these delegates from all over the world that came to Indianapolis, they wanted to entertain them. And so they asked me if they could use my place, and I said, well, yeah. And first of all, they had auditions. And then after they had auditions, and they used my place for that, because I had the stage and the PA and all that. And then after that, they had rehearsals. And then we had 4 banquets where we fed anywhere from 350 to 400 people. And we had the food ready for them, and then played music. And there was a group that played, and they let me get up and play with them on the last one, and it was Polish. And most of them couldn't even speak English. And they had an interpreter. And so I remember years ago I played at a wedding in Pittsburgh for one of my cousins. And I played a song that I learned, stole it off a Boots Randolph album, and it was called Old Joe Clark. And it's bluegrass, but I played it up there, and they were all doing the polka to it. I thought, Polish people, polka. Let's do that. So the band knew it. There was half of them were bluegrass pickers. And I thought there'd be a bunch of polka dancers. Well, I was wrong. They started a Congo line, and out of those 400 people, there was less than 10 people sitting. They were all over the place. That was that was a lot of fun. So, but able to host people from all over the world was kind of a neat thing for me to do. So,
as a venue owner, can you tell me a little bit about your time with COVID and how that affected things?
Yeah, well, yeah, we just totally closed down. It was close to a year and a half. And it was a struggle because meanwhile, the insurance goes on, the light bill goes on and all that. So I did get a check from a foundation that there's several businesses around got help from the government back then, and that made a big difference. And I was able to keep the payments going with that until it was time to open up again. So that, and then COVID, and then rightly after that, then I got, whether it was long COVID, it was also something that took my blood count, iron and everything, till I was just wore out. And I got treatment from a doctor in Indianapolis, an Indian doctor that knew what it was. I had something called Rosai-Dorfman disease, and it's rare. I was one of the gifted ones that got it, and he started treating me, and it's been 3 years. But now I'm feeling better now, because I didn't play then. I would have other bands play, and sometimes I'd get up and play with them and do a song or two. That'd be about it. But now I tell people I'm getting my gumption back, so I'm feeling more like playing. So I got a group coming in called the Country Playboys, and they're going to be my house band. So I'll be playing with them. So we're trying to get the live music going again.
Who are some of the musicians that you've gotten to play with outside of the dance barn over the years?
Outside of the dance barn, there was, before I even built the place, I met a fella going to IU to get his doctorate. And he grew up in Tennessee, went to Vanderbilt. Now he's going to IU to get his degree in classical guitar. And he played for Kenny Rogers for a couple of years. And I saw the plaque that he had that Kenny Rogers gave him, so I knew that was true. And he was in Bloomington, and he just needed a place to make some money besides what he was doing. So I hired him, and we did jobs all around Eagles clubs and whatever we could find in Bloomington. And then after I built the place, he was my guitar too. But he was good, and I was privileged to have somebody like that, because we all learned quite a bit from him. And he was a good teacher as well, and that's what he's doing to this day. He's in Hawaii teaching at a college, teaching music. His name was Tom Engel. So, and then when he left, of course I was going here then, he graduated and left, and he handed the lead guitar playing over to a guy named Marcos Cavalcante, and he was from Brazil, the country of Brazil, going to IU to get the same degree. And when he called me, I said, man, I need a country picker, so I know you didn't grow up with country music, so I'm sorry I can't use you. An hour later, here he was on my porch with his wife and 2 kids. And he says, I need this job. Because he was doing coffee shops for like $15. And he says, I guarantee you, I'll learn your music and it'll sound like a country picker. And he did. He sure did. He even said, I'll even write your music out on score sheets. So I said, thank you, but nobody in my band knows how to read music but me. So, so thanks anyway, but you don't need to do that.
Over the years, can you tell us about the audiences that come, the line dancing, and how has that kind of fluctuated or changed over the years?
Part of what my inspiration was, I went to a dance hall in Bedford that a fella had. People everywhere. They were standing against the walls. And that was before I started building. I said, man, I got to do this in Brown County. So that was in the 90s, and line dancing was big. And then about the time I opened, it wasn't so big anymore. It just started dying out, but I kept it going. And it's just lately, there's a bunch of young kids and young people coming that have just discovered it again. So I have been having big dance crowds. So I'm hoping to keep that going, and maybe with this new band I got, gear them toward playing music that the dancers like. So that's always been part of it. So,
how do you feel that the Dance Barn and your music and your efforts in music have changed the local music and dance community?
I don't know that it changed anything. I do know that as far as dancing, I've been told I have the second nicest dance floor in the state. Maybe, I don't know. I don't go anywhere, but some people do. And so it is a place where people can come and dance. And then the dance teacher I've got, his name's Billy. Now that's an interesting story. You want to hear that?
Sure, yes.
I had a dance teacher coming from North Salem, a long ways off, and it got to be too much for him. And one day he says, this will be my last night, I quit. I says, well, thanks for the 2 weeks notice. And so that weekend we were playing, and here comes a bunch of college, mostly girls, and they wanted to learn some dances, running to have a dance teacher. So Billy had been coming just a little bit, and I said, Billy, can you teach these? He says, I don't know. I only know 5 or 6 dances. I says, well, teach them what you know. And so he did, and he did good, and he interacted with them, and they loved it. And I said, you're my new dance teacher. He says, well, no, I'll do it till you find somebody. And I never looked. So now he's doing this, and he's teaching at Indianapolis at the Greenwood Moose on Tuesday, and then he has classes in Columbus on Wednesday, and then he's booking out, and people are hiring him. So, and he's choreographed several dances that are now being used by other dance instructors, and so he's gotten pretty well known.
What's Billy's last name?
Crace, C-R-A-S-E. So he grew up in Kentucky, and so if there's a Kentucky basketball game on it, and he's also plays rhythm for me. So rhythm and sings. So he gets sidetracked a little bit, but yeah, he does good. And now his wife is a dance instructor too, and they go out as a team. Her name's Carla, and they've helped me quite a bit keep the dancing going.
Something that you may not have kind of realized that you've contributed to the music scene is what I'll call a low barrier of entry for musicians, for audio engineers, for lighting, for anyone that wants to produce an event. There aren't a lot of places left that you can call up and say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so and I'm interested in doing this," and get a human being and a response.
Uh-huh.
And I know from my personal experience, the ability to try things, you were open and willing, and by creating a space where it feels safe to come and, how do I put on a show? What is it like to run lights for the show? It became a place locally that a lot of musicians have come to find those skills and learn things, and by offering a home to music, it really has gone beyond the walls of the dance barn.
Well, now that you mention that has happened. We were playing one night, and a family group came and sat right in the corner, and they're watching everything we did. And they're not dancing, they're not interested in dancing. And after we got done playing, their daughter, they were from California. They moved here because she got a scholarship at IU, a 4-year scholarship at the School of Music, and she played violin. And she wanted to learn how to play country. And this gal was gifted. Her name was Susan Anderson. And since then, she's made big tracks in the music business, but she wanted to learn. So us old rednecks taught her what we know, and she ran with it. She got really good really quick. Of course, that was the reason she got the scholarship. And that's just one. And there was another little gal that came, and she wanted the same thing. And now she's out playing with wherever she wants to play. But she learned the licks from us just sitting in, letting them sit in and come. And another case, a fella had just got divorced, and he was, it got him pretty bad, and he wanted to play guitar. Could he just sit in the back and play guitar? And I said, fine. And so that didn't last long until he started learning to dance, and then he picked a dance partner, and now they're married. So, so that sort of thing has happened here. Yeah.
I have personally witnessed a proposal right there on the dance floor at one point during an event here. So it has touched many lives, and a lot of your hard work and dedication may not always be recognized, but it's felt, and we're appreciative of everything you've done. Have you played any other genres of music? You mentioned ballroom music, country music.
Well, we used to have a church orchestra, and I was in it, and of course I played saxophone, and since I could read music, and I went, I played in an assembly in Cincinnati, one in Pennsylvania, one in Toronto. Went up there and played in the orchestra. Now they've quit doing it since because it's easier to just play recorded music for the singing. But that was interesting, and I even they even made me conductor of the one here locally. So I was in charge of it, and so we had to play the songs from the church songbook, and so it was a struggle to not play them too fast and get in trouble.
What of the concerts that have happened here that you did not play in, are there any of those that really stand out to you?
Well, let's see. Well, one that was a big draw was the High Rider Band came, and it was a fellow that booked it, and he just wanted to know what to rent the place, and I gave him a pretty good deal. And next thing I know, people were camping all over that 5-acre field, and he sold camping sites, and then he sold booths where people could come and sell their tie-dyed shirts and their leather crafts and all kinds of things. It got big, but man, there's a bunch of people came to hear the High Rider Band, and then that was pretty good. I got in trouble with the zoning board actually, because I'm not supposed to let people camp in that field without permission. So, but we got that resolved. And then a feller named Spencer put on a hippie fest once, and that was kind of big. And I met a band called, is it John Weldon?
John Weldon.
John Weldon and the Awakening, and I played with them, and he let me, and I guess he didn't let too many people get up, but I did one song and sat down, and they said, "Come on back up here." Kind of made me feel good. And then a couple other times I went where they were playing locally and sat in with them and did a few songs. So I got to be friends with his band, and that was a nice little turnout. So
You mentioned other venues locally. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the other music venues around the county that are here now or maybe were at one point?
Well, one that was here, and it was built there on a piece of property on the way to Nashville called the Little Nashville Opry, and it was a going thing. And I actually played there with the house band on a Friday several times, and they'd let you do 6 songs, and you'd get an encore if you didn't suck. And I always got an encore. They never told me if I sucked or not, but I played there actually the night before it burnt. I was there on that Friday night, and the next night it burnt. So that was that actually helped my business, because it would draw people that loved country, and before or after the show, a lot of them would come here, and so that it didn't hurt me at all. It helped me. So I hated to see that go. Yeah, I worked there for a little while. They needed somebody to run the concessions, and so I worked there for a little bit, but I couldn't keep it up. It took too much of my time. But I got to see several. I got to see Marty Robbins and the Judds and Merle Haggard. And I got to sit in and watch those shows, or parts of it, and that was kind of a treat.
Let's see. Have you ever recorded an album?
No, probably the only thing I did was, well, a friend of mine that played bass for me, he recorded some songs that we did with 4-piece, and featured the songs that I played, a lot of the old country songs or whatever, and put it on YouTube. So you can go on YouTube and put my name in with saxophone, because there's more than one Mike Robertson, I found out. There's several. But if you put my name in saxophone, and that was done almost 10 years ago. And then Terry Lee, the rock-a-boogie piano player that does, Jerry Lee Lewis and Elvis, he made an album and wanted to be on some of them. So I got to record that. But that's about the extent of what I've done.
Where did you go to record that album?
Right here in the building.
Right here?
Right, he's set up right here.
Excellent.
And recorded me on some of them old rock songs that he did. So, and then when he'd come, I'd book him in here, and then I'd get up and play something with him. Of course, it was rock songs that I grew up with, so it wasn't no trouble to find the parts to fit in.
Can you talk a little bit about maybe a time in your life where you were going through a hard time and maybe music became important and helped you with?
Well, probably the biggest one is just what I mentioned earlier about getting that Rose-Dorfman disease, where it just takes your hemoglobin, your blood count, and everything until you're just wore out. And I couldn't had enough energy to play a song or two. That was about it. Then one other thing, I had to get all my teeth pulled because they were bad. So I said, is this going to mess up my playing? It did mess up playing the, they used to call it a Jew's harp, but that's not correct anymore. Now it's called a mountain jaw harp. It did mess up playing that because you have to have teeth to play that. But I found out that with the implants, it still works. So I had to get used to it, but I can still play with the implants. So that was a little bit of a hardship. But as far as a time when, there was a time when I got two boys, and when they were little, I had to quit playing out because they were, you couldn't leave them at home. Because my wife sang with me. She was in the band as well. So when they got old enough to take care of themselves at home, then we started booking out again. So, yeah. Now, there's a story about that too, if you want to hear it. She was in school with me. And I didn't know her too well, but after we got out of school, I found out she could sing. And so I begged her to come with us and sit in with it's kind of a rock band that we had. And she knew all them songs, like Beatles songs and Little GTO and all that. So we were doing that kind of stuff. And at the time, she had 3 boyfriends. Well, she found out one had a wife and kids in Kentucky, so he went by the wayside. And another one that she kind of liked, every time he'd come to see her, he had a different car. Never had the keys to him. And she couldn't figure that out. It didn't dawn on her. And every time he came to see her in Brown County, they were like a new Chevy Impala. And then one day the Brown County Sheriff picked him up, because those were all stolen vehicles. So he went by the wayside. And the third one went with us on gigs. And because he didn't want her to, be alone with me. So after we got done playing, that's when you want to go eat somewhere. So he'd never have any money, so I had to buy him a hamburger too. And she finally realized that I had a car and a job. That's what I tell people. It's not true, but she ended up being my wife. So, but she's a good singer, and yeah, that fit in good. And then that was back in the 60s, so she's still with me today. So I had 2 sons. One of them was a good singer. And then those drums on the stage belonged to my grandson. And when he got out of school, I said, well, I need a drummer. And the band says, I don't know. I said, give him a chance. And he caught on quick. He's good. And now, my youngest granddaughter is 17, and she's in school. And she's taking music, playing drums, marimba, saxophone, and the show choir needed a bass player, so she's learning bass guitar. So she's doing everything. Yeah, she can play whatever. And so I'm kind of proud of her. Her son, her dad, which is my son, calls her Little Mike.
What are some defining moments in Indiana music history that you've witnessed or been part of?
Let's see, Indiana music history. Well, the fact that the country music has gotten to be, I've noticed that there's a certain age group that likes it, and a few younger people like it, but most of the country music that you hear anymore, it shows that I'm old school, because if I listen to a modern country station after about the third song, I said, ugh, let's go back to the classics. So I've noticed that, and there's more rock sounding in the country music. So, and the young kids, they like it, but there's a lot of young people I know that still want to play the old country. So there's still a place for it, because you actually need to play music instead of just hitting the distortion pedal and covering up. You can play a lot of bad notes with distortion and nobody knows it. So I'm seeing that. And then, of course, here in Brown County, a lot of the bluegrass pickers are here, and a lot of them there's some pretty good ones. I got a neighbor down the road that his name's Barry Elkins, and he plays mandolin and guitar and sings, and he was in a band called the White Lightning Boys, and they got pretty well known around here, so they were playing quite a bit. And he comes Tuesday night at the dark. It's the Muddy Boots Dark Club, but we have a picking circle, and he comes a lot, and sets in and plays, and he's pretty good on the mandolin and the guitar. So, and we're getting actually some pretty good pickers on that just little bitty old jam session.
What are some other Indiana artists or bands that you think deserve more recognition?
Well, I don't know a lot other than locally, but there's some groups out here that are these hills really are full of musicians, and I just know some of the fellows that have groups. I know. As far as their bands, I don't know a whole lot of them, but I know different ones, and they kind of form and dissolve and reform, and so they're the ones that I got coming to be my house band are they're old school, but they're all top-notch players, and I'm really looking forward to that. So they're out of Bloomington and Spencer, so they're local, and so that'll be fun.
What advice would you give an aspiring musician getting started in following their path in music?
Probably, if somebody let's just say somebody's learned to pick and sing a little bit, if he can find a band that will let him set in, or him or her, and then learn, because if you're playing by yourself, that's one thing, but when you're with a group, then you have to stay on beat, and you have to do your parts, get in and get out, and it's a different way of playing. But the best thing you can do is find somebody that'll let you sit in and learn from what you learn from other people. We've all done it. I've done it. When I was first starting, I was just playing different songs, and the other musicians would say, "That's not C minor. You played in the key of C." I went, "Oh, well, okay then." Different things like that. So they would kind of school you as you went, and that's probably the best thing you could do if you want to learn to just play with a group. Now there's those that can only play from the printed page. I mean, they don't know how to ad lib or improvise, and that's a whole different ball game. So if you sit in with a band and you leave your music at home, you'll eventually learn that.
Are there any stories that you would like to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
There's a couple, yeah. There was a fella grew up in Stanford in the 50s, and his name was Joe Edwards, and he played guitar, and he played guitar for Bobby Helms back in the day, and then he went to Tennessee, and he was playing for, I think, the Carlisles, and one of them says they're auditioning for a guitar player at the Grand Ole Opry House Band. So I would book him in here to do shows, and he told me about this, and he says he auditioned on a Thursday, and he says that weekend I was in a band backing up some unknowns. One of them was named Elvis, another one was named Carl Perkins, and he was in the band backing them guys up. And then he played there for over 40 years in the staff band. But then after he retired, I would book him in to do a show with him and his wife. And he would come and he would play to tracks that he made up. And phenomenal guitar player. And his wife would sing, and that I would have my house band. And after he did his show, we'd get up and play. And he'd be talking to people, you know, and visiting, and it wasn't long he was up there with us. So that was fun. Fun to play with a guy like that.
What else would you like people to know about your life?
Well, it's been a good life. I'm thankful that at being 79, I still can play and want to. And a part of it is growing up. I'll tell you a short story. One of the things that perhaps shaped my life and my longevity, I guess. I was 12, I found a pack of Camels, and I went out behind the woodshed and lit one up just to smoke it. My dad smelled it, and he came around and caught me. And back then you could paddle a kid, so I got paddled. And I says, I don't think I'll smoke. Smoking hurts my ass. So I never did. And so I still got lung power today because I've known so many musicians that were phenomenal, but they smoked and they drank, and their lifespan was short, and it's too bad. So I never did that. So maybe that's part of it, but I'm thankful for that, the way my dad kind of watched out for me.
What do you hope for the future of live music in Indiana?
Well, it's here to stay. I know that. So I'll provide a place for people to come and play here as long as I can, and then it goes to my sons when I'm too old or out of the picture. Whether they do keep the music going or not, I hope they do. Indiana's just a good place for music. Now we got the new music center here, and they're booking acts, bigger acts. So then we got the Playhouse, and they're booking a lot of tribute bands, and so it's here to stay. So it's there'll be music in Indiana. We know for sure it's in Brown County. So.
Well, unless you have anything else to add, that just about wraps up the interview for today.
I've got one more funny story.
Let's hear it.
There's a fella I booked in here to put on a show with him and his wife, and his name is Richard Smith. A lot of people never heard of Richard Smith, but he is one of the best guitarists in the world. and he does shows with a guy named Tommy Emmanuel. And he's in that caliber. So I booked him and his wife. She plays cello, and so he played, and he could do Jerry Reed songs like Jerry's Breakdown, which you don't hardly hear anybody play that, but he nailed it. And when his wife wasn't playing, there was somebody had left a little kitten, a little white fluffy kitten, and his wife sat and held that thing. And so the next day he did a show in Noblesville. Well, then he called and she wanted that kitten. This was in the winter, and the kitten, somebody found it and it was gone, but she wanted to take it home with her to Nashville. So she had, they were looking for it, and he was on his hands and knees in the snow, looking under my porch, going, "Here, kitty, kitty, kitty." And here's this guy with, I say, $1 million hands on his hands and knees because his wife wanted him to find that kitten. So I thought that was funny, but Google Richard Smith, and you can see what he does. That guy is, I've had him here twice, and it's a real treat to have somebody like that play guitar. So that's one other story. There's a few.
Well, certainly you've built a home for music, and it comes from your heart, and it shows. And I think that means the world to all of us. So I just want to really say thank you so much for everything you've done to make a home for music, all the music you've played over the years, and thank you for sharing your stories and experiences with us today. Your contributions to Indiana's music history are invaluable, and we're honored to preserve your story for future generations. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before I stop recording?
Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. So thank you for the opportunity, and anybody wants to play here, just give me a call, and we'll see if we can work it out.
Well, as a final statement, the Indiana Music History Project relies on community support to continue preserving and sharing the incredible stories of our state's musicians. If you'd like to help keep this important work going, please consider donating to indianafound.org. Every contribution makes a difference in keeping Indiana's music legacy alive. Thank you very much for your time today, Mike.
You're welcome.